My name is Geoff Brighty. I'm here representing Plastic Oceans Foundation. In a moment, I'm going to pass around some artifacts of plastic. Now, you would have seen some of these on your beaches when you were on holiday. Invariably, you'd have seen plastic waste on the beach. What I'm going to hold up, this is a facial scrub. And this is some of the microbeads that are inside facial scrubs. This is toothpaste. You all know toothpaste. And one of these little jars has toothpaste stuff inside it. So you're going to see the microbeads inside the toothpaste. There are also some fragments and some little things called nurdles, which are the little pre-production pellets that go into making any plastic products. And there's some cotton buds in there as well. I'm just going to pass them around just to remind you really what we're dealing with. And this is a biodegradable bag. So I'm going to start with this lady here. If you can keep them all together, I'll be grateful. Okay. Now I'm going to try and play the trailer to the movie. If it doesn't work, I can move on.
I've followed them since childhood.
What do you think it's from? Is it from a ship?
I could see plastic everywhere. In what we thought was a relatively pristine environment. I started to wonder what was happening in oceans elsewhere on the planet. Growing up, my world was the ocean. It's where I feel the most spiritual.
As a freediver, it was the place where I proved myself to myself. Finally, have the opportunity to pay the sea back.
Only a fraction of the plastic that we produce is recycled.
This is never going to degrade. It's got nowhere to go.
This was something that these animals, they were forced to endure because it was man-made and we'd put it into their environment.
The record is 276 pieces of plastic inside of one 90-day-old chick.
If the plastics are in the food chain for the dolphin, they're also in our food chain.
Exactly.
Communities are built on these landfill sites.
So sweet potatoes, corn, sugarcane, all growing on 40 years of garbage.
Do you have anything not wrapped in plastic?
No.
We have to make our life better for our kids' children. Change is possible. It starts with us.
Okay, thank you for watching that. Hands up anybody here who's seen the film A Plastic Ocean? Okay. Anybody who's got Netflix at home can go and watch it tonight, and I recommend you do. Might be in your hotel suite, you never know. I'm here to talk about the issue of plastics and the science behind the plastics. As a colleague here, David, was saying that this has exploded in the last 4 or 5 years, really, as a global awareness has really picked up. And I think it's really important to make the point about tourism is one of the victims of this issue, but it's also one of the drivers of the issue. And I want you to think differently about how plastic is working in your home life, but also in terms of what you do in professional lives if you're in the industry, and think a little bit about what is it that you can do to make a difference. So as Plastic Oceans Foundation, we've been going for about 8 years now, so we were a bit ahead of the game in terms of picking this issue up. Blue Planet 2 has just started this week in the UK. It's just picked up on the point. The very last show, we'll talk about ocean issues. One of the production team from Blue Planet, first Blue Planet, was actually the instigator of this film, Joe Ruxton. And we want to work with business and industry to make a difference. So if you're really up for this, please talk to us afterwards on Ian's stand. Sorry. There we go. Okay, so here's some facts. We are producing and consuming over 300 million tonnes of plastic per annum. About half of this is used once and thrown away. If you do any recycling, you'll know that your bins are full of disposable plastic. Around 8 million tonnes is estimated to go into the oceans a year. That was 8 million tonnes was the annual production in the early 60s. So we have now gone to put it in the ocean, what we were making in the early 1960s. From the graph, you can see it's just going inexorably. Estimates will be, 400 or 500 million tons within the next 10 years. The plastic fragments that escape through the ocean, into the oceans, end up largely in these large circulatory patterns called gyros, and there's 5 of them, but they're across the coastlines. The plastic goes out to sea, but it also again gets washed up. Parts of the Mediterranean, there's more microplastic than there are plankton, and that's having a massive implication for the food chain. Think about this. Plastic doesn't break down, it breaks up. Okay? Big stuff breaks up into smaller pieces. It doesn't break down. It's pretty intractable stuff. You will be familiar with all the plastics in your lives, but the sorts of things we're dealing with here. It's packaging. It's marine stuff that's been left out from where the fishermen have lost their nets. It's drinking bottles. Go see the stand over here on Water to Go. It's fantastic. I want to highlight one thing here, which is this is advertised. If you can see the little bottles at the bottom here, which you'll find in any hotel room, it says, and I quote from the website, cheap disposable hotel bathroom amenities set in PET bottle. It's actually marketed as a disposable product, and yet something that's indestructible, how can it be disposable? And it's everywhere. Plastic is now in Antarctica, in the remotest parts of our planet. 73% of UK beaches, they found plastic pellets, the actual nurdles, which are going around now. They're looking at pre-production pellets. But also we're dealing with microplastics, and you'll see the facial scrub that's going around as well. We've got some products that are made small and exist in the environment as small items, but they're not the only things. We're talking about things like products, fibres from your washing machine. Washing machine produces 700,000 microfibres per wash of acrylic material, and that research was done at Plymouth. Tyre crumb, washings out from the paint on roads is made out of plastic, molten plastic. Ship paint, and so on. I could go on. There are literally many sources of microplastics that start out as microplastics alongside the big plastics that then break up. So anybody know where Henderson Island is? Everybody heard of Henderson Island? Okay, I'm not surprised. So 38 million pieces were found on this island. And you can see that. It's somewhere between Australia and South America. It's middle of nowhere, and yet there's plastic turning up there. How can that be? But we don't know how long this stuff's going to last for. And my last couple of slides are going to help highlight this. Plastic is now forming itself into rocks. So we have lava formations, plastic is being tied up, and there's something called plastiglomerate. This is happening on Hawaii, amongst other places. But this stuff will sediment out and will end up in the base of the food chain. Last slide. And then, well, so what? It ends up in our food chain, in our fish, in our shellfish, and we eat this. So it's not just the animals in the environment, it's us that are picking this plastic up. Thank you.
Morning, everybody. I wanted to start by getting everybody to take a breath. So ready on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Breath in. Breath out. Let's do it again one more time. Breath in and breath out. So the first breath you took is courtesy of the planet's forests. We all kind of know that, the lungs of the world. But the second breath you took is courtesy of the oceans. So the oceans are responsible for 50% of the air that we breathe. The oceans are not an optional extra. It's not something we just disregard and it's tucked away somewhere. This is a blue planet, as we've been seeing, and it's on the BBC right now, and you should watch it. I love the fact that the strapline for Blue Planet is take a deep breath. I mean, that says such a lot, and it's a message we can carry with us. And if you doubt about the popularity of the oceans with the public, 10.5 million viewers for the first episode of Blue Planet. So ocean creatures, our oceans in tourism, this is a really, really important thing. Jobs, food, recreation, everything is here from our seas, 70% of the world that we inhabit. And it sounds like I'm lecturing you about this, but all of us came to this at some point in our lives. There are those in this building who haven't got there yet. There are those who are just embarking on this journey, and there are some on the panel here who have been looking at this issue for a long time. We have been working on the issue of single-use plastics. You'll find us just here where the big fabric whales are next door, and we in particular use charismatic animals because they're so fascinated with the public, to highlight that plight. These are sperm whales dead, full of plastic. And as Geoff pointed out, that plastic is now getting inside us. There is no escape from this. It's not some marginal issue. Anybody walking past, vaguely hearing this microphone, should stop right now and listen, because this is critical. It's not an optional extra. So what do? I'm in Rowlands. We run events and education. I represent a core team of staff, 900 volunteers. We're a not-for-profit company. And we use the charismatic power of whales, dolphins, and other marine creatures to captivate ordinary people. Yes, those who are whale nerds like me, but others who are new to the issue but are fascinated by these creatures. And we go into schools, we run pop-ups and events, and our best-known event is something called Whale Fest, where we, on average, get about 15,000 people come. Our Whale Fest is perhaps the biggest in the world. And we use these events each year to focus on a campaign and a way in which we can captivate people. And I'm finding it very hard for our organization to move away from ocean plastics as an issue, because it's such a big one, and it's one that we can all tackle and must tackle. So whales and dolphins, because they're a really powerful attraction. Whale watching is such a huge thing, so we work very closely with the whale watching industry. You may know these facts and figures, but 2.1 billion US is the revenue from whale watching every year worldwide. Those are the figures from 2008, the most recent figures. 120 countries go whale watching, 3,300 boat trips taken. It's a big deal. And the BBC poll of things to do before you die, in the top 5 was whale watching, swimming with wild dolphins, swimming with sharks, and diving the barrier reef. So I don't think I need to emphasize how important oceans are. And what we've learned from all that we do is communicating in the right ways is how we tackle this issue. It's not just about yelling at people, it's finding the route in, the way in which we all respond to different stimuli. So we work with journalists and TV people, we work with celebrities who are fortunate enough that we have them support our cause, global organizations and non-profits, businesses, especially businesses, a really powerful way of doing it, artists, scientists, important people too, and campaigners. And we work very closely with a global organization who we're a partner of, the World Cetacean Alliance, on global campaigns on this issue. And these are the different ways in which we can communicate the issue. We were here back in February at the Telegraph Outdoor Show. We had an installation about 200 square meters. And the reason I mentioned that is that was not a traditional audience for interest in ocean issues and whales and dolphins. The event was focused around cycling, camping, outdoor activities, but we had 15,000 people come through our installation, at which we were partnering with the tourism industry. So we had sponsors from tourism, we had people from the whale watching industry, but we used it as an opportunity to talk about ocean plastics. So you will see a big bottle chain that we have on our installation here, gathered from an organization in Cornwall, a bottle top chain 1.5 kilometers long, harvested from one beach and continually being replenished, really. People would come into our installation and see what they thought were beautiful shells hanging in blue light, and they'd be horrified to discover that they are lids from the very disposable bottles that we're seeing on sale here and that we see on sale everywhere up and down the country. So at that event, we targeted the 4 single-use plastic items that we should refuse to use: coffee cups and lids, plastic bags, single-use water bottles, and drinking straws. And it was amazing what a powerful response we got from the audience to that by communicating in a really positive way. This is actually our audience at Whale Fest, so there's a lot of work to do, because there's 3 disposable drinking water bottles right there. And we know they're right here in this venue too. There is no place for them in society. We cannot deal with them. We must look for alternatives. It's not an optional extra. So communicating behavior change is the thing that I've become really passionate about. So we're looking at ways in which we modify people's behavior, make it easy for them. Like with a donor card, you can just accept that you're going to give plastic a miss and deal with it that way. 10% increase in organ donation in Wales when people said they would just donate simply. So making things easy with incentives. making things attractive and timely. That's the time to do your recycling. When you go on holiday, that's the time you make a change in your lives, when you're feeling positive and you've had an amazing experience. And what about the issue of towels? Why can't we do the same with plastics? When you bring it down to an issue with this hotel recycles, or your room has recycled, you get an amazing increase in people picking up on that and seeing that as a social change they can all embrace. So today, right now, I'd urge you to start right now like I do and avoid these items that you see on the screen here, refuse them, and more importantly, tell everybody. You're at World Travel Market, you're all going to leave here and go back, and I know, and deal with colleagues or your bosses or people that you feel you can't make any headway on the issue, but one person near to you may be in a position to influence another important decision maker. It sounds really glib, but it's a lesson I've learned, that just tell one person and you can make a change. The people far away from you who you think don't share your point of view, there's somebody near to them that can change their point of view, and you may just be a few steps away from them. So tell everyone. That's what happened with Sky Ocean Rescue. It was John Riley, head of the news, and it was his son told him, and now Sky have made a huge change and are eliminating plastic from their production, operations, and supply chain. So there's reason for hope, but honestly, we all need to act right now.
Okay, thank you very much. So in the spirit of moving on quickly, Mike arrived last, but we're keeping to the sequence on the programme. So Mike, please, you're next.
Hello everyone, my name is Mike Webster, and I am the slightly late Chief Executive of WasteAid UK. You'll have heard of WaterAid. Well, we're WasteAid. We deal with rubbish. I don't think there's anything less attractive, but I'm a bin man and I'm proud. What do we do? Well, first of all, we work with local organisations in those parts of the world that don't have a formal waste collection. And I'll just talk about the scale of that in a second. We work with people to first of all say that this stuff matters, and we'll just talk about why it matters in a second. What can you deal with, how can you deal with this on a practical level? It's really important for the awareness to be raised, but what do we actually do with all of this plastic littering our shorelines? And finally, we're trying to get it out there because this is a grossly neglected and underfunded issue. Only 0.2% of international aid goes on solid waste, and most of that goes to some of the wealthier countries. Meanwhile, I would suggest it's one of the first things that you notice sometimes when you go to a poorer country, that there's a lot of rubbish around. So the scale of this thing is enormous. There are two sorts of data in the world of waste. There's terrible and awful. So that 3 billion could be 2 billion, it could be 4 billion, but hey, it's got 9 zeros on the back of it. The UN Environment Programme took its first look at this in 2015 and came up with the startling conclusion that 3 billion people don't have proper waste disposal. What does that mean is your rubbish might be picked up, but it's taken to a place where it's not controlled, okay? So that might end up being a landfill, by a river, by a beach, and so forth. And why does that matter? Well, here are a few of my holiday snaps. There's massive local impact. If you're living next door to a dump site, and generally it's the poorer parts of town that end up living next to them, you have to put up with the air pollution, your water being contaminated. Often we see dump sites adjacent to things like tidal creeks, where people are using them for water or washing. And obviously there's local land pollution as well, particularly in places like Smoky Mountain, for instance, and the edge of Manila. You'll end up seeing people actually using old dump sites for agricultural land, so they'll be planting on them. Climate change, direct impact, obviously that kind of organic waste, we're not talking about plastics, but the organic waste that's inside those dump sites end up slowly decomposing anaerobically and producing methane, so that's a big driver of climate change. Increasingly, there's also evidence about the impact of black carbon, i.e. soot, that's coming from open burning as well, and the impact that has on climate change. And of course, marine litter. Now, various estimates vary. Either is it 90% of the plastic comes from 10 rivers, 80% of plastic comes from land, but the reason there is plastic in the sea is because people are dumping it on land, okay? There's a little bit that's coming from the boats and the ships, okay, but most of it is poor control of waste. And out of those 3 billion people that don't have proper waste disposal and controlled waste disposal, 2 billion people don't even have their waste collected. And I would argue that that is a direct public health emergency. So why does that matter? Well, it blocks drains and watercourses, and where does it go when it actually floods and the floods come? Well, it ends up in the sea. It's a vector for disease. That matters because it impacts directly on things like Zika virus. We heard about that. Where did that come from? Well, that was blocked up drains, stagnant water, mosquitoes breeding, off we go. And there's a direct impact on disease as well, and obviously vermin and that sort of thing. And the burning leads to air pollution. Now, there's some increasing evidence about 270,000 people a year dying directly because of burning waste. Now, that's direct input. So it's leading to air pollution. And anyway, you can imagine what my holiday snaps are. If you want to know where the plastics in the ocean come from, this is a picture. Apologies for the not fantastic resolution, but this was a friend of mine in Lagos who sent it. This was an image after recent floods. You can see people up to their waist in plastic containers. Obviously, Lagos is a coastal city. Where's this stuff going to end up? Here's another picture from Lagos where you can't physically drive down the street. Okay, so these are the impacts. This is where this stuff's coming from. We increasingly talk about public health. Why? Because actually when you're working in a low-income country and people have got lots of priorities, talking about climate change and even about marine plastics is lower down people's lists. So if you can say to people, actually, there's a direct impact on your child health, there's 6 times the level of respiratory illness, this is WHO, double levels of diarrhea, and direct longer-term impacts from poor sanitation. So kids that live and grow up in dirty environments end up not, even when they're fed properly, absorbing the nutrients. So this thing called nutritional malabsorption, ending up with stunting and actually lower brain weights with a direct link to educational underachievement. So just think about that. If you don't have your bins collected and you're living in a dirty environment, your kids are not going to grow up to be the doctors and the engineers and the teachers and everything that you need to develop your society. So poor waste management kills. Said Lancet, this was a couple of weeks ago, 9 million people coming from diseases linked to the mismanagement of waste and pollutants. We've got the uncontrolled burning of household waste causing an extra 270,000 premature deaths every year. Again, happy to provide you with all of the references for that. And we think that waste isn't just an environmental issue, it's a global development issue. You can't grow now, clean up later. Okay? As we have more people with greater incomes living in bigger cities, and there's changing to a consumer lifestyle. So, big question, what do we do about it? Well, the first thing is gather data, okay? When we go into a country, the first thing we have to do is get the gloves on and actually have a look what's in there, because if you don't know what's there, you can't manage it. And that picture's from Somaliland's first ever waste composition analysis, done by us. This one's the Gambia's first full-scale ever waste composition analysis, done by us, okay? You've got to know what's in there. And then we have a look what's in there and saying, okay, what's there a demand for? Okay, so typically things like fuels. We have a big demand for charcoal. Charcoal drives deforestation. Actually, you can make it from woody organic waste, so coconut shells, peanut shells, all of these sorts of things. So using very, very simple, low-end technologies to develop these charcoal briquettes, which burn hotter, burn better, burn longer than the lump wood. Actually, I've got it down here. I have my pet paving slab. You can have a look at afterwards, which is about the world's best paving slab. These paving slabs are made from about 200 plastic bags each. Film plastic, real problem stuff. It blocks up the drains, gets out into the oceans. No one knows what to do with it. There's not a real strong end market for it. In some parts of the world, people will buy PET bottles. They'll buy HDPE, the kind of big gallons. But the film plastic from the ubiquitous black plastic bag, no one knows what to do with it. Here we go. You can make something useful out of it there. It's hard. We've actually been working with Imperial College. It's harder than Portland cement. It dries quicker. It's cheaper. Fish waste, horrible smelly stuff. I know it's not plastics, but there we go. It causes lots of problems, and you can make animal feed out of that. And ultimately, we work with communities to develop what we call community-level control. Our challenge is how do you get the bins emptied, essentially when the municipality can't or won't. Okay, so you help people organise to say, actually, you can do some pretty simple things, and crucially, keep it out of the ocean. Okay. Finally, working back in the UK, saying, actually, this matters. We want people like DFID and the UK government and everyone to actually start taking this seriously. Interestingly for us, we've been banging on about this for years. It's a deeply unglamorous topic. Actually, marine plastics is perhaps the hook that people are beginning to understand if you don't manage this stuff on land, with all these horrible impacts for the local population, it'll end up in the oceans, okay? So the ocean plastics are incredibly important, but for us it's just a symptom of a much, much wider issue. I seem to have stayed within the bing that hasn't binged yet, so that's the final one. That's from a picture from our big training conference. We had people from 12 different African countries where there's poor waste management, and Pierre, our fantastic Cameroonian trainer, in the middle, showing people how to make paving slabs out of plastic bags. It's very simple, the technologies we use. Everyone's always quite seduced when you're talking about waste. Let's look at some really exciting technology that takes our rubbish into gold. It ain't going to happen, okay? Find simple technologies with a product that actually people want, and show people how to do it. And that's me. Thanks for your time.
Okay, moving on, so we might have a chance for a question. Dave is our next speaker. Thank you for your patience, Trudi.
My name is Dave Shanks from Water to Go. Take a slightly different approach to the problems of plastics in the ocean. My background has spent 30 years in textiles. So I traveled the world looking for factories to make products. And as I traveled, I saw more and more images like this. The majority is single-use plastic water bottles. It's one of the biggest challenges. Ian highlighted we have 4 main areas of products which are creating a lot of plastic waste. Single-use plastic water bottles are one of the greatest problems we have. We basically had a position whereby, after spending so much time looking at the issue, I wondered what I as an individual could do. And that's the same question I'd like you all to ask yourselves today. Because if we as individuals can start to make a difference, we can then get the corporations and whatever. So I asked myself, what could I do? A lot of people who buy single-use plastic water buy it for 2 reasons. The first reason is that they don't like tap water, or when you're traveling, you don't have access to good tap water. And secondly, it's convenience. So what could I do to create something which could actually address both of those problems? We created a brand called Water to Go. Water to Go is a reusable, BPA-free, completely reusable water bottle, which is FDA approved for reuse. And we basically created the brand around the concept of replacing single-use water bottles. We then looked at why people, once they're traveling, go back to buying bottled water, and it's because of the quality and the issues they think are in the bottled water, and in most cases there are issues. So we created a brand new technology filter. The original technology was developed for the NASA space program. We've identified that technology and developed it. Our filters will take any water anywhere in the world apart from salt water and will make it drinkable instantly. As soon as you drink through the spout, it draws water through the filter and makes it drinkable. We take out bacteria, protozoa, cysts. We even filter viruses out. If you're traveling to somewhere like the Indian subcontinent, where they have massive problems with pesticide pollution in the water table, we'll filter out pesticides. If you're like me and don't like the taste of tap water in the UK, our filters will take out the chlorine and the fluoride out of your tap water and make it taste delicious, like I used to have as a boy in Sunderland. We've worked really, really hard to ensure that our product is the best possible. And to that extent, our bottles conform with 4 of the major sustainable goals from the UN, including, as you'll see down there, and while we partner up with Ian and Gina, the plastic pollution of the ocean major concern, so we work in line with that. Second thing is our filters, our standard filter in our 75 centilitre bottle will replace 400 single-use plastic water bottles. Now, we're all here at the World Travel Market. It's Responsible Travel Day today. So I want you all to think about the companies that you're working with. We encourage, as an industry, people to buy, or we give them, single-use plastic water bottles. We have to address that in a different way now. So what we've done, we've built the bottles that have a much, much better impact on the environment as they're reusable. But the other thing is the corporates need to start to buy in. We need to get people to change their opinions, and the corporates need to start buying into endorsing and encouraging people to use a single, a reusable bottle rather than single-use plastics. So what we've done, this is a first example. Journey Latin America are one of the first companies to achieve AITO sustainable travel goals. So with Journey Latin America, they're now encouraging their clients to take a branded bottle with them. And those of you in the marketing departments think of the long-term benefits of people carrying this before, during, and after their holidays. In addition to that, what we're doing, we will give their clients a discount off our website prices, but most importantly, the discount we give to their end consumers, we will also donate to nominated worthy causes stipulated by the travel companies. So it's a win-win situation. We're already working with Wild Frontiers, Steps, and Journey Latin America. So it's not a question purely and simply of what I've done and what we've done as a team, but it's what everybody here representing different companies in different parts of the tourism industry can influence people, as Ian was saying, to change people's opinions. Single-use plastic water bottles have no place in what we do on a daily basis. It breaks my heart when I go into a hotel and the first thing you see is 3 bottles of water, and you know what's going to happen to those bottles. My name's Dave Shanks from Water to Go. If you want to see what we're doing, we're just across here next to the Incredible Ocean stand. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, in a moment I'm going to ask Trudi to take the stage, but what's going to become clear is that we're not going to have a lot of time for questions, that's clear. But what I do hope is you recognise all the panel members, and I would suggest that once we finish, because we have another session running straight on at 11:45, is that we use the space around here if you want to talk to any of these people, and you can gather around and talk to them around there if you don't get a chance to ask your question in a few seconds. Trudi.
Good morning, everybody. Hope everyone's surviving World Travel Market so far. Travel and tourism plays a huge role in the global plastics crisis, but equally it can play a role in solving it. My role as Director of Responsible Tourism at Brighty is to look at ways we can create change by being responsible tourists. Travel and tourism brings tourists to environmentally vulnerable regions of the world, islands, reefs, and small communities, and in many cases pushes local waste management systems beyond their capacity. But through responsible tourism, we can inspire and support action. We can work more closely with organisations such as these here today. We can encourage our tourist board and travel-related clients to support this movement. We can work with local communities to help solve issues on the ground. And we can lobby the big players to make plastic reduction a priority in their CSR programs. That's what I'm doing at Brighty. That's how we're trying to make a difference. I'm going to give you one example of the work I do. One of our Brighty clients is Belize Tourism Board. Belize is an amazing destination. The people who live there really care about the country. There are no browns allowed. You won't find McDonald's here. It has unsport jungle, gorgeous beaches. It's also home to the second largest living barrier reef in the world. 25% of employment in Belize comes from tourism. its famous blue hole, pictured here, is one of the best diving destinations in the world. But, as here in the UK, a lot of the food, local, traditionally home-cooked Belizean food, is served in non-recyclable, takes billions of years to break down styrofoam. As was the situation in the UK until the 5p plastic bag charge was rolled out across England, Scotland and Wales, plastic bags are handed out freely at every shop. And of course, many of the plastic ends up dumped at the side of the road and on the beaches. However, I recently spoke at the annual industry conference last month, which focused on sustainable tourism. The Minister was present, the Director of Tourism of the Tourism Board was present, Amanda Charles from the CTO. The outcomes are clear. When the reef is better, we're all better. So, Belize needs legislation, enforcement and education. All three are crucial to the welfare of the Belizean environment, its main tourist attractions, which translates obviously to the long-term livelihoods of the Belizean residents. So what can they do? Well, the same as many of us are lobbying on our own governments to do at home. In Belize, I met up with one of these companies here, Resource Recovery Recycling, and they accept plastic, electronic waste, cardboard and metal. There's also a company called Eco-Friendly Solutions, which produces the biodegradable disposals, but they're much more expensive than the styrofoam. My role is to encourage more hotels, businesses to use these corporations, and to encourage government to incentivize the use. I also conducted site visits across the country where I found lots of businesses and movements already fighting for change. Locals have launched a campaign in the Cayo district of Belize to say no to styrofoam. Turtle Inn on Placencia has invested in stainless steel straws. This is my favorite. This is watermelon juice with no sugar, delicious and served through a stainless steel straw. The tide is turning. We just need to help those who are leading the way and ensure others have the resources they need to follow. A few destinations are doing some great things. In 2015, a video of marine biologists pulling a plastic straw from the nostril of a sea turtle off the coast of Costa Rica went viral. Now, Costa Rica is taking dramatic action against plastic waste with a plan to ban all single-use plastics by 2021. This includes straws, bottles, cutlery, cups and bags. The government is offering incentives to businesses as well as investing in research into alternatives to single-use plastics. France. The French have gone one step further in the last few months. However, by banning all plastic bags, what's more, steps are now being taken to extend that ban to cover disposable plastic cutlery and dishes. This puts France head and shoulders above the rest in the struggle against plastic pollution. You can see here there's lots of countries doing some really great things. These are the ones that have charges, taxes and bans on plastic bags. But where are the other countries? So, there's plenty Belize can do to reduce plastic waste and better produce its marine and jungle environment. As here in the UK, these changes won't be made overnight and may take some time for benefits to show. But there's hope and drive, just as there is here and in many other destinations across the world. And it's not just my role as Director of Responsible Tourism where I practice responsible tourism. For me, responsible tourism is a way of life. It's about doing things responsibly, protecting the environment and the local communities, It's about where I choose to take my holiday. It's about refusing that plastic bag or that straw. It's about telling my friends and peers why I'm doing what I do. And it's about not stopping until every tourist is a responsible tourist and every destination is a responsible destination. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so I'm afraid, as we suspected, the time has actually run out. But we have 5 people on the stage who you now recognise. So what I'm going to have to do in a moment is ask those people to vacate the stage for the next people. But please, if you want to ask them a question or talk to them, you recognise the faces, and luckily there is plenty of space around the back and the sides of the stage. So please feel free. But will you just join me, please, in thanking our speakers for those excellent presentations?